Now, the Ukrainian president has said that the latest round of sanctions imposed by the US and UK are weak and thinks Russia will regard them as permission to attack. So should the EU be banning Russian oil and gas? Well, that's a key question. Here to help me answer it is the leading expert in sovereign debt and sanctions, Jay Newman. Jay, very good morning to you. So, I mean, that's really the nub of the issue here. A ban on Russian gas is ultimately the biggest stick that the EU can wield.
It is the biggest, but you have to take into account that the EU has already paid Putin $38 billion since he invaded Ukraine. So you wonder whether they're going to have the guts to actually do that. It's going to be very expensive.
And also, we hear this morning that the EU's ban on Russian coal is actually going to take longer to implement than expected as well, because Germany is dragging its feet.
And if you think about it, coal is small beer. It's symbolic, but it's about $4 billion a year. Nothing like what the gas and oil are.
So can you see the EU actually cutting back on Russian oil in particular? The US has done it. The UK has done it. Is this the next move, if you like, for the EU?
Oil is much more feasible than the gas. I think gas will take a lot longer to replace, but you could see them cutting back on the oil. But the bigger point is that sanctions don't really work for regime change, and the undermoney will keep flowing. This is the money not seen publicly that influences people and events. And that oil will find a home. It'll find a home in India, in China, and elsewhere. It's just going to keep moving, and money will keep flowing to Russia.
So, Jay, I mean, you've used the term regime change there. I mean, what are the kind of things that the West has to do, short of military action, to get Putin out?
It's hard to imagine anything else. And we're already in economic war. I doubt that we're going to really move into kinetic war, although we're supplying weapons. So you could argue that we're already at war with Russia. But I'm very skeptical that in the short term, Putin is going anywhere.
Is it fair to say, Jay, that the West has kind of come up really now against the limits of what it can do against Russia without severely hurting itself?
And we're already hurting ourselves. I mean, prices going up for commodities, agricultural commodities are through the roof. Critical elements like palladium and neon are constrained. It's all going to feed back into inflation. It's a very, very expensive process to sanction a nation like Russia.
What have you made of the sanctions on Russian banks in particular last night? I mean, I've seen it suggested that this is really now approaching the level of US sanctioning of Iranian banks a few years ago.
The thing about sanctions is, and even sanctioning those banks, is that they've been preparing for this for many years, at least since 2014. So it is, I'll say it's more than inconvenient. But it's not as dire as people would think. There are plenty of institutions and plenty of people around the world that want to help evade sanctions. And that's what's going on behind the scenes. That's the undermoney.
So how do we get at those people, the people who are enabling sanctions evasion?
I think it's almost impossible. It's a huge industry, and more people keep coming out of the woodwork. There are lawyers, there are bankers, there are trust officers. I mean, we see the tip of the iceberg with the yachts and the planes. That's inconvenient, but oligarchs can still go to nice places. They can go to Dubai, they can go to Oman, they can go to Cuba, Venezuela. It's a different life, but it's not a bad life.
And what sort of nationality are these people, these facilitators of sanctions busters? Are they basically Middle Eastern and Venezuelan and Cuban, as you suggest, or are there Westerners involved as well in this activity?
Well, it's, famously, Wyoming is a place where lots of shell companies are formed. So Wyoming and Nevada, Delaware to some extent, the entities are all over the place. But historically, the home of the most creative and sophisticated money laundering, hiding and burying has been London. I think many of those service providers are now having to work in different ways. But, my belief is they're still in business.
So what can the London financial regulators do to curb this?
What they're doing, they can constrain it, they can curb it, but they can't keep people from traveling, and they can't keep other other places and other people from popping up in different jurisdictions to provide the same services. All those become more expensive and more complicated, but the money is still flowing. Think about the 38 billion that the EU has paid just for gas and oil in the last couple of months. That money's going somewhere, and it's going somewhere safe. It's just flowing underground. We don't see it, but you can be sure that Putin isn't selling oil and gas and not getting money in a safe place.
Jay, just before I let you go, we've learned overnight that Russia has made its latest debt repayments on its debt, its coupon payments and so forth, in rubles rather than US dollars. How long before Russia formally defaults, do you think?
Russia is really making, I've gotten this completely wrong. I thought Russia would go into the grace period at least. They would have 30 days to make the payments. They didn't take advantage of that. So they're playing a very interesting game. And the other thing I'd point out is that using rubles and playing in the ruble markets is their game. And a lot of people are making a lot of money knowing what the central bank of Russia is going to do and knowing what the Russian policy toward its debt is. So every time we see a movement or a decision on the debt or on the ruble, somebody is making money.
All right, Jay, it's been fascinating talking to you this morning. Thanks very much indeed for joining.